Want to know how one neurosurgeon was so tired that he fell asleep standing upright during brain surgery, leaning against a microscope? If so, welcome to 10th Heaven. You can also protect yourself, your family, and loved ones from similar situations by watching this video to the end. In our first video, brain shut down for just today, the sleep. Instead, he's no longer right. October 12th, 2023, Rockford, Illinois, St. Anthony Medical Center, operating room number 4. A neurosurgeon stands at the surgical microscope. His hands are inside the patient's skull. The procedure is delicate. It requires absolute concentration. It demands everything the human brain is capable of. Before the operation began, Tina Peppers, senior coordinator of the surgical department, approached the chief of surgery. She informed him that the surgeon had worked late the night before and had already performed a full day of surgeries. She said bluntly, "Continuing is dangerous." However, the chief physician expressed complete confidence in the situation and authorized the surgery to proceed. 40 minutes after the procedure began, the operating room staff noticed something was wrong. The neurosurgeon was leaning on the surgical microscope. His eyes were closed. He had fallen asleep. Meanwhile, his hands were still inside the patient. And this is not a rumor. It is an official statement in a whistleblower lawsuit filed in the Winnebago County Circuit Court in 2024. 3 former heads of the hospital's surgical department signed this statement. These 3 former leaders risked their careers to document in the official record that the surgeon had fallen asleep due to fatigue during the operation. And this is far from an isolated incident. It is a window into a systemic crisis that the medical community has been aware of for decades. And to this day, the medical community refuses to fully acknowledge this systemic crisis. In our first video, we tracked, night after night, what happens to your body, hormones, heart, and immune system when you sleep less than 6 hours. In our second video, we met Maureen Weston, who went 18 days without sleep and survived. In our third video, we saw how Donald Creed's brain shut down for just 4 seconds on a highway in Oklahoma. And that cost 10 people their lives. Today, the setting changes. Instead of a highway, it's an operating room. Instead of an 18-ton truck, a scalpel. And the person in danger is no longer riding alongside a tired driver. He lies unconscious right beneath him. He signed the consent form. He entrusted his exposed body to a stranger. He cannot get up and walk away. He cannot object. He cannot even know what is happening right above him. This video will take you inside the operating room during those hours when a surgeon's brain begins to fail. We will examine a Harvard study that, under controlled conditions, proved exactly what sleep deprivation does to a doctor's hands, judgment, and diagnostic thinking. We will see the real people behind these numbers, and we will ask the question that medicine has avoided for a century. Why do we allow this to continue? There is a well-established expression in American medicine. You will not find this expression in any textbook. It is passed down in hospitals, just as traditions are passed down in families. The phrase goes like this: see one, do one, teach one. It describes the speed at which residents must master the most complex skills. But there is also an accompanying belief, just as unwritten, yet possessing tremendous power. This belief states, a good doctor never gets tired. A good doctor does not complain about the schedule. A good doctor does not go home until the work is done. This mindset has shaped American medical education for over a century. It originated in the late 1800s with Dr. William Stewart Halsted, the founding surgeon of Johns Hopkins Hospital. Halsted regularly performed surgeries at night. He demanded the same of his subordinates. He is officially considered the father of the modern surgical training system. However, there was one detail. For most of his career, Halsted was a heavy cocaine addict, and this fact largely explains his apparent immunity to exhaustion. His model became the standard. 100 years later, medical residents in the United States routinely worked 36-hour shifts. Some worked even longer.
They toiled 80 to 100 hours a week after week, year after year. This was not considered exploitation. It was considered training. That is how character was forged. And the patients, who had no idea that their surgeon had been awake for 28 hours, firmly believed that they were being saved by a man at the peak of his mental abilities. But that was not the case.
In 2004, a group of researchers from Harvard Medical School set out to measure what everyone in the medical field had suspected, but no one had scientifically proven. They wanted to find out exactly how long shifts affect doctors' performance. The study was led by Dr. Charles Chisler, the very same sleep researcher who later testified in the Michael Jackson case regarding his 60 nights without REM sleep. We mentioned this in the first video. His team was called the Harvard Working Hours Health and Safety Group. They observed first-year residents at one of Boston's largest hospitals. The doctors worked traditional shifts, an average of 77 to 81 hours per week. At the same time, they regularly worked shifts lasting 30 or more hours straight, and these grueling shifts occurred twice a week, every week.
The researchers did not ask the residents how tired they were. Instead, they recorded actual errors, documented, verified clinical mistakes involving real patients in actual intensive care units. The results were published on October 28, 2004, in 2 articles in the prestigious New England Journal of Medicine. The findings were unequivocal and alarming. Residents working the traditional schedule made 36% more serious medical errors than their colleagues on shorter shifts. They made medication dosing errors 21% more often, and they made 5.6 times more diagnostic errors. 5 6/10 times more, not 56% more, 5.5 times more often.
The second article assessed so-called attention lapses, a medical term for what we called microsleep in the previous video. Residents on a traditional schedule experienced a critically high number of such lapses during night shifts. And these were not just complaints from the doctors. The lapses were measured using electrooculography, special sensors that track eye movement. The devices recorded slow, drifting movements of the eyeballs. This is the main sign that the brain has drifted off to sleep, even if a person's eyes are open at that moment. It is the same phenomenon that occurred in Donald Creed's cab on I-44. Only now, it was happening to a doctor standing at a patient's bedside or at the operating table.
Let us step into the operating room and take a look inside the brain of a surgeon during the 18th hour of a sleepless shift. We already know what happens to the prefrontal cortex during sleep deprivation. The brain loses its ability to accurately assess its own condition. A surgeon at the 18th hour of work does not feel exhausted, and that is the first problem. Clinically speaking, a tired doctor is the very last person to realize they are unfit for duty. But in surgery, there is a second, far more specific problem. Surgery is not a test of theoretical knowledge. It is a test of real-time decision-making under intense physical and mental pressure. It requires what researchers call non-technical skills.
First, situational awareness, the ability to simultaneously track multiple variables and instantly adjust a course of action as the situation changes. Second, decision-making, the ability to quickly choose the one correct path from a dozen options under time constraints. Third, communication, the ability to clearly, calmly, and precisely coordinate the actions of the entire team right in the middle of the procedure. In a 2023 study published in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine, researchers measured these 3 specific skills in surgeons who began daytime surgeries immediately after a grueling night shift. The results were conclusive. These surgeons demonstrated a critical decline in situational awareness, decision-making ability, and communication with their team. At the same time, their overall rates of postoperative complications remained within normal limits. Their hands still remembered how to operate. Their mechanical skills remained intact.
But the mind that controls those hands was severely compromised. By the 18th hour of a shift, a surgeon's brain makes decisions based on incomplete data. A surgeon's brain clings to false cues. He gives inaccurate commands to his assistants, and he is completely unaware of it. Because the prefrontal cortex, the internal alarm system, shut down first. The surgeon feels confident, but the surgeon is not up to the task, and the patient under the scalpel cannot tell the difference.
Scientific studies are compelling, but they are abstract. The people behind these numbers, however, are very real. Case 1, October 12th, 2023, Rockford, Illinois. The story with which we began this video. A neurosurgeon at St. Anthony's Medical Center was allowed to begin an extremely complex brain surgery despite direct warnings from staff that he was critically fatigued. During the procedure, he fell asleep, leaning against the surgical microscope. At that moment, his hands were inside the patient's skull. According to the case file, the hospital took no action. This pattern of behavior continued. As a result, 3 high-ranking leaders of the surgical department filed a formal lawsuit and lost their positions because of that decision. But they still signed the document.
Case 2, Boston, Massachusetts, late 2016. Dr. Tony Tanuri, an orthopedic surgeon at Boston Medical Center, was called in for emergency ankle surgery around 9:30 p.m. Before the procedure began, he decided to step outside to his car to grab a bite to eat. And he fell asleep. He did not wake up and return to the hospital until the next morning. All that time, the patient remained in the operating room, under anesthesia, covered with surgical drapes, waiting for the doctor. The surgical team waited until hospital administrators officially acknowledged that the surgeon would not be coming. The Massachusetts Medical Board issued a reprimand to Dr. Tanuri and fined him $5,000. $5,000! For leaving a person under general anesthesia alone on the operating table. The message the medical system sent to society was crystal clear.
Case 3. This case has no name because it happens every day in every hospital, and the patient never finds out about it. In a large-scale study by the journal JAMA Network Open, which surveyed more than 11,300 doctors between 2016 and 2018, doctors with the highest levels of sleep deprivation reported a 97% increase in serious medical errors. 97%, almost double. And the researchers specifically emphasized these were figures that the doctors reported voluntarily. The actual number of errors, according to the scientists, is much higher, because a sleep-deprived, exhausted doctor often does not even realize they have made a mistake. Their prefrontal cortex is shut down. The main error detector is the first to fail.
A Harvard study was published in 2004. Its conclusions were crystal clear. The New England Journal of Medicine is not a tabloid, but the most respected medical journal in the world. 2 articles at the same time, 36% of serious errors, a 5.6-fold increase in diagnostic errors. And yet, 20 years later, a neurosurgeon in Rockford falls asleep right over an open skull. Why? The answer lies in 3 reasons. Reason 1. For medical residents, that is, interns, working hours in the United States are now strictly limited. Since 2003, the relevant council has prohibited them from working more than 80 hours per week and more than 24 consecutive hours per shift. But think about it, that is still 80 hours a week. That is still a full day of continuous work. But what is even worse is that for practicing licensed surgeons, so-called attending surgeons, there are absolutely no legal limits on working hours. An experienced surgeon in the United States can operate for as many consecutive hours as the hospital administration allows. And most hospitals leave this decision entirely up to the doctor's personal discretion. And we have already seen what sleep deprivation does to a person's judgment.
Reason 2. Medical culture still glorifies exhaustion. Surgeons who push through extreme exhaustion are respected and held up as role models. Those who honestly admit they are too tired to work safely, however, are considered weak. This is a direct legacy of Halsted, a 130-year-old system built on a cocaine-fueled prototype, and it shows no signs of giving ground. Reason 3. There is no breathalyzer for surgeons. We discussed this in relation to long-haul truck drivers, but the situation in the operating room is exactly the same. A tired doctor enters the operating room. He undergoes no objective tests for fatigue. No one measures the adenosine levels in his brain. No one checks the function of his prefrontal cortex or his situational awareness. The patient on the operating table does not know how much sleep his doctor has had, and he cannot ask. He is unconscious. But we are unstoppable and want to know exactly what happens in the operating room during brain failure. Let us get specific. The danger of surgical fatigue lies not only in large-scale, obvious disasters. It manifests itself in an invisible, gradual deterioration resulting from hundreds of small decisions. By the 18th hour without sleep, the surgeon's situational awareness begins to narrow. His focus narrows to a tiny point directly in front of him, the immediate area of the incision. He stops perceiving peripheral information. He may fail to notice a change in the patient's vital signs on a monitor located at the edge of his field of vision. He may not hear a comment from the anesthesiologist to which he would normally react instantly. He may not sense the barely perceptible, atypical resistance of the tissues to the instruments, a signal requiring him to stop immediately. By the 20th hour, decision-making speed declines. The surgeon needs more time to process what he is seeing. He begins to blindly follow old, standard protocols instead of adapting to the unique anatomical nuances that have come to light. He solves the problem he expected to see, rather than the one that actually exists. By the 22nd hour, communication begins to break down. Commands become unclear and vague. The surgical team begins to intuitively adapt to the surgeon's mistakes and hesitations without him even noticing it. The nurses cover for him. The anesthesiologist compensates. The system smooths over another's shortcomings until the very end, until it reaches its limit. And at some point, at the 24th, 26th, or 28th hour, the thalamus shuts down for 4 seconds, or 6, or 12. But in the operating room, unlike on a highway, there is no sound of a crash to mark that second. The person under anesthesia will either wake up later or not, and the true cause will never be recorded in the medical chart. And there's something else, something important, something everyone's keeping quiet about, but not us. In our last video, we compared fatigue to alcohol intoxication. We demonstrated that 18 hours without sleep is equivalent to a blood alcohol concentration of 0.05%, and 24 hours of wakefulness constitutes a legal state of severe intoxication. Now, apply this to the operating room. A commercial airline pilot will be grounded immediately if even 0.04% is detected in their blood. That is half the legal limit for driving a car. Their license will be revoked and they face criminal prosecution. A long-haul truck driver with the same 0.04% would be taken off the road, fined, and have their license revoked. But a surgeon who has not slept for a day and is in a cognitive state akin to that of a deeply intoxicated person is calmly allowed to operate on the operating table. No checks, no mandatory breaks, no oversight. A pilot who is drunk is not allowed to take a plane into the air. But a surgeon whose brain is intoxicated by fatigue has every legal right to open your skull and operate on your brain. This is not a metaphor. This is current medical law. And that is exactly why Tina Peppers stood at the door of an operating room in Illinois trying to keep an exhausted doctor from seeing a patient, but she was simply ignored. So what should we do in this situation? You cannot always choose your surgeon. Emergency surgery leaves no time to check the schedule. But if your surgery is elective, you have 3 legal steps you can take to protect yourself. First, ask what time your surgeon's workday began. It is your legal right. You have the right to know this before you sign the consent form for surgery. If the doctor started rounds at 6 a.m. and your surgery is scheduled for 10 p.m., he has already been awake for 16 hours. This is critically important information that you are fully entitled to know. Second, if the surgery is elective, request a morning time slot. Morning surgeries are performed after the doctor has had a full night's rest. They occur during the peak of the doctor's circadian activity.
All studies agree on one thing. Morning procedures have the lowest complication rates across all fields of medicine. Third, be sure to ask whether your surgeon performed surgery the previous evening. Statistics show that for doctors who had difficult evening or nighttime cases the day before, the rate of post-operative complications in subsequent patients rises sharply, especially in complex, high-tech procedures. You have the right to ask, but most patients never do. They blindly believe that the system has taken care of everything and protected them, but the system has not. That's why we've compiled a complete legal checklist of questions for your doctor in a convenient PDF safety protocol. If your work involves high responsibility and you can't afford mistakes, we have a step-by-step focus maintenance protocol. You'll also find a symptom recording table for depersonalization, microcorrections, and loss of time. And an action algorithm if the symptom recording table test shows a critical adenosine level. What to do right now to avoid passing out while driving or at work. You'll find the link in the description of this video.
In 2004, Charles Czeisler published his shocking findings in the world's most authoritative journal, a 36% increase in serious errors, a 5.6-fold increase in diagnostic errors. That same year, he testified before the United States Senate, warning of the dangers of excessively long shifts for doctors. He made a statement then that has gone down in history. We would never allow a pilot to take the controls after a day without sleep. We would not let a truck driver get behind the wheel. So why do we allow a doctor to pick up a scalpel and perform surgery? 20 years later, this question remains unanswered. Limits were imposed on residents. For experienced lead surgeons, none. In Rockford, Illinois, a neurosurgeon fell asleep with his head buried in a microscope, his hands still inside the skull of a living person. The hospital chose to turn a blind eye. 3 employees who tried to stop him were fired. They filed a lawsuit, and the case is still ongoing. And the patient, the very one who was lying on the operating table that night, may never know what was happening above his open skull. He was unconscious. He trusted the system. He trusted the authority of the white coat. He was certain that after all those years of training, licensing, and inspections, someone up there had definitely made sure that the person holding the scalpel was capable of handling it safely. But no one had made sure. The brain does not forgive mistakes on the highway, and it certainly does not forgive them in the silence of the operating room either. Sleep will always take its toll. The only difference is who will foot the bill. And if you've made it this far, thank you so much. It certainly means you possess a high level of intelligence and are always striving for its continuous evolution. So, let's move on to the logical conclusion of our story.
A neurosurgeon fell asleep at the operating microscope. Donald Creed fell asleep at the wheel of a multi-ton truck. Both were experienced professionals. Both had impeccable reputations. Both wielded instruments capable of killing instantly. But there is a third machine. A machine that carries hundreds of people at an altitude of 11,000 meters. A machine where a 4-second micronap is not 100 meters of uncontrolled road. It is 11 kilometers of uncontrolled sky. In 2008, 2
pilots of a commercial airliner over the Pacific Ocean fell asleep at the same time. The plane flew 50 kilometers past its destination before air traffic controllers were able to get through to the crew and wake them up. There were 40 passengers on board, and that is the topic of our next video. Subscribe to the 10th Heaven channel so you do not miss it. What science cannot yet explain, it exists here.